That image, that image of my mom stretched out on the sofa, that led to my next aha. The image of the police force rallying in back of her, the neighborhood enveloping her, she with cold compress on forehead stretched out. That would be indelibly branded on my brain forever. A potent visual reminder. Am I speaking up? It's always going to cost somebody something. Can you relate? Were there events, people in your life where you realized, even if you spoke up for your own survival, you thought it was at somebody else's expense? Now, at this point, I can make a clear-cut choice. I can remain mired, stuck in the muck of my old story, which meant I would give myself excuse after excuse after excuse as to why I couldn't lend my voice to a source of suffering larger than myself that couldn't speak for itself. Or I could clear my old story, rewrite my old script, give myself fresh possibilities. Let's do that. Let's give a brand new, fresh ending to a very weary, tired old story. That requires transformation. Transformation requires work. It requires us to come up with new potentials for ourselves, new possibilities. So let's try this on for size. Is it possible? Just possible. Every time we think about ourselves as invisible, that those of us who grew up without a voice, without visibility, we have a secret superpower we don't even know we own. I'm fluffing my cape as we speak. What is our secret superpower, you may well ask? Wait for it. Our secret superpower is invisibility. That's right. Those of us who grew up without a voice, without a visibility of our own, well, we are uniquely qualified. We are highly motivated to lend our voice to a source of suffering that cannot speak for itself. Precisely because, not in spite of, we've grown up without a voice of our own. Who knows better than we do what it feels like to be completely incapable of giving suffering, of giving injustice a voice? Now, if you're anything like me, you may be saying to yourself, oh, this is getting better and better. We grew up invisible, without a voice, and our superpower is invisibility. Yay, how lucky can you get? Can you explain how that works? I'd be happy to. Just bear with me for a minute. When we actively own, when we actively claim invisibility as our superpower, our ticket to lending our voice to a source of suffering that cannot speak for itself, rather than letting it passively claim us through shame, that's when the transformation can happen. That's when we create the gift of the shift. I'm so psyched about it, I even have a fight song for us. Those of us just coming out of our shells, ready to be seen and heard by the world, taking up space. I can't do it alone. You have to help me. I'm practicing my power stance. It goes something like this. It's got some fancy YMCA moves. Heart open, truth spoken. You repeat it 3 times, loud. I gotta hear it. Heart open, truth spoken, heart open, truth spoken, heart open, truth spoken. Love that little ditty. Melinda Gates reminds us, a woman who has found her voice is by definition a strong woman. The search to find that voice, that can be remarkably difficult. Those of us who grew up invisible without a voice of our own, that kind of feels like climbing Mount Everest on roller skates with one foot on a banana peel. Which is why I don't recommend we leap onto the stage tomorrow. I recommend in making small, regular deposits in your find your voice, value your voice, speak up in your everyday life bank account. These small dividends will pay huge Small deposits will pay huge dividends over time. How small, you may ask? Well, let me tell you how small my 3 steps were. In the first place, I was enrolled in a public speaking class, and I had never heard of Brene Brown. I know, the shame. I hadn't. I decided to rectify that error. I would listen to her, glass of bubbly in one hand, computer in the other, comfy in my PJs, curled up in my bed. I Know How to Live, New Year's Eve 2017. I listened to every single tape she had ever made. She rocked my world. One sentence in particular. She says, if you're not in the arena getting your butt kicked, she doesn't want to know from you. Well, I desperately wanted to know from her. So that night I vowed I was not going to be a sideline Sally. No more. My New Year's resolution, I was going to make my first speech. I didn't know where or how or what was going to happen. I just made some vague prayer to the universe. It was, help, help, help. Then I proceeded to climb up Cathedral Mountain for inspiration. There, I was so overcome with my desire to connect and my desire to impress Brene. I reached out, gave the first stranger I saw my hand, shook it, and said, Happy New Year. 3 words. That was it. I'm fairly certain Brene would give me a pass, though. It's not the amount of words you speak, it's how deeply your heart wants to connect. Then you lend that connection your voice. That's a speech. My first stage, it was not something fancy. It was my backyard. I was sick and tired of being rejected, heartsick really, of these fancy events. I kept getting rejection after rejection. It wasn't my turn yet. So I decided I could wait forever, or I could create my own stage, and that's what I did. My backyard was my stage. I created this event, 18 minutes of your time for a glass of wine. Invited my dear friend Spiritual Group, who I must say was the best audience ever. Practiced my first little TEDx speech. Then we drank wine. It was a win-win. My first speech for injustice was not the world's water crisis. It was for me in my own gym. I'd have to hear with the guy who kept the fan on full blast, no matter how freezing it got. I was freezing my little tush off, so I demanded a group vote. I lost. It still felt terrific. Speaking up when you're used to being silent feels amazing. I only have 2 questions of you before I say goodnight. One of you, one of silence. The last question I ask of you, though, it's the whole enchilada. If you take one thing, just remember one thing from the speech tonight. It's the answer to this question. Are you willing? Are you willing to leave this earth, giving silence the final word? If you're not, are you willing to join me here on this stage to give a speech? It doesn't have to be a TEDx talk. I'm not recommending you leap onto the TEDx stage so that you fall in your kishka. You see, I firmly believe, besides speaking up in public, on the stage, the journey to find your voice in public speaking begins with the journey to find your voice in everyday life. The core, the key, the trick, the secret to speaking up in your everyday life is your willingness to substitute one habit for another. So I ask you, are you willing? Are you willing to substitute the habit of swallowing your words, stifling your energy, suppressing yourself, for the habit of speaking up? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes awareness. Every time you catch yourself, and you will catch yourself, swallowing your energy, suppressing your ideas, your thoughts, your voice, I need you to ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? Or am I just falling back on an old habit I've yet to outgrow? Only you know the answer to that question. Think of me as your chief transformational fairy godmother, head cheerleader, seated on your shoulders every time you catch yourself zipping it, swallowing your words, stifling your energy. I gently, politely remind you to please speak up! Kind of like Eliza Doolittle at the Ascot when she tells her horse, move your bloomin' arse! Oh, my darling audience, move your bloomin' vocal cords. Then, when you're used to the habit of speaking up in your everyday life, I need you to join me here. Give a speech. The world needs to hear you lend your voice to a source of suffering that cannot speak for itself. The world will hear you now. You see, our voice is the messenger of our hearts. Can you imagine the majesty, the magic of a world we could create when we stop stifling our words, when the truth buried in our hearts is finally released, finally given wings through our voice? Our founding fathers created the most brand new world they could conceive of, born in the brain, with the most powerful ideas known to mankind. That world got us so far. It had a good run. Isn't it time, though? Isn't it time that we heard from our founding mothers? You, my darling audience, you are our founding mothers. You, me, we. That world, the world we create, it will not be born in our brains. It will be conceived in our hearts, delivered through our voices, fully unleashed. Clearing your story will free your voice. Freeing your voice at this moment in time, I believe, will free the world. Now, you, if you're anything like me, may say, that's great for the world, what's in it for me? Well, here's what I know as a recovering psychologist. There's no more powerful, no more potent form of therapy than commanding the spotlight. You don't have to delve into your childhood wounds, digging up insight after insight for years. In a moment, when you command the stage, you will be seen and heard by the world, and it feels amazing. Clearing your story, freeing your voice, commanding the spotlight will make you whole. Lending that voice to a source of suffering that cannot speak for itself, that'll make you heroic. I want nothing less for you, my precious perfect pumpkins. I want you whole. I want you heroic. 2 other fabulous reasons to join me here. Can I tell you a secret? Just us. It is fun up here. It is seriously fun. A little nerve-wracking, but fun, joyous. Secondly, remember Cher when she got her Academy Award for Moonstruck? You may be too young. I do. I remember it like it was yesterday. She unapologetically looks the camera straight in the eye, holds up her award, and proudly says, if I can do this, anybody can do anything. Comes to public speaking, and yours truly, no truer words were ever spoken. If I can do this, anybody can do anything. Finally, my last question, I do mean finally, was a silence. I confronted him, shook my fist, said, dude, it's been 65, 66 years. What took you so long to release me? He laughed, that condescending laugh of his. Ha ha ha. Then again, ho ho ho. Then reaches down. Silence is very tall. In case you ever meet him, you'll know. He's very, very tall. Reaches down unapologetically, whispers in my ear, oh, sweetheart, I was just waiting for you to